The idea of managing natural resources based on ecosystem services, that is, the benefits people obtain from nature, is gaining traction internationally. There are 4 types: provisioning, such as food and fresh water; regulating, such as air quality, climate and pest regulation; cultural, such as recreation and sense of belonging; and supporting, such as soil quality. For this approach to be successful in New Zealand, we need a comprehensive understanding of the state of our ecosystem services. With that in mind, more than 100 of the country's leading scientists and academics penned chapters for a new book called Ecosystem Services in New Zealand: Conditions and Trends. This is the first overview of ecosystem services in New Zealand. Editor John Diamond says the authors didn't set out to uncover any new revelations. Rather, the book summarises our current understanding of the functioning of New Zealand's ecosystems.
The goal of that is really to provide information for people who are managing our natural resources, so they'll be able to understand the impacts of all the different natural resource decisions that they make. In the past, we've really had decisions being driven by economic considerations, but we need to consider a wider perspective of ecosystem services.
So what is the state of our ecosystem services? After all, it's inevitable. People will look at a book like this and ask, how are we going?
Basically, we are getting a lot of improvements, and we are getting some services which are staying the same, and there are a few that are deteriorating as well. One that's improving is our area of Indigenous forest in New Zealand. We have 1 million hectares of shrublands which are regenerating to mature Indigenous forests, so that's one service that's improving. In terms of deteriorating, probably the provision of clean water is deteriorating a little bit in New Zealand.
The Department of Conservation says the book will help improve the understanding of the value of the services provided by nature.
We call those sorts of services natural capital, but most people have no idea what that means. They have no idea how important that actually is. And they think that it's free. They think that the water, pollination and the soils, the soil quality and what have you is free. But we're getting to a time in history when, of course, they won't be free. And they're actually not free now. So we have to make a change in the way that we think about that, and certainly put that into policy settings.
The ecosystem services provided by our orchard are massive. Indeed, we get a lot of bounty from our fruit bowl. When people think of orchards, they think of the provisioning ecosystem service, the fact that the kiwi fruit industry earns $1 billion of exports every year. But what we don't think about are the other ecosystem services provided by kiwi fruit in orchards, apple tree orchards and vineyards. For example, we have found in kiwi fruit, by drilling down to 9 metres, that there's some 6.5 tonnes of carbon per hectare per year sequestered by the roots of the kiwi fruit. That's 6.5 tonnes of carbon per hectare per year that is not in the atmosphere. This is a hugely valuable regulating ecosystem service provided by a kiwi fruit orchard. There's another service too. We hold music festivals and food festivals in vineyards. That's a very, very valuable cultural service provided by our orchards and our vineyards.
We wrote about pest regulation and ecosystems, and I suppose for New Zealand it is one of the pest and weed capitals of the world, and so we have a unique situation where we have increasing abundance and distribution of a lot of non-native species, and we need to understand what their effects are on our ecosystems. There's been a lot of focus, management, research on pests and weeds for good reason in New Zealand because of the number of them, but taking an ecosystem view tells you something about what effects they have on our systems, and those may be quite different from native species, and so we're not just managing for particular species now, we're managing for diversity, carbon, nutrients, water and other things.
New Zealand's got a vast marine realm covering 5.7 million square kilometres, about 21 times larger than the New Zealand landmass, and it has it produces for us a range of services. There have been several attempts to estimate the global total of ecosystem services, and if we scale for New Zealand's area, then we come up with a total of something like $357 billion worth of services to the New Zealand economy every year. And even if that estimate is out by even 2 orders of magnitude, it does indicate that the marine realm is vital for producing services to New Zealand, and we need to know more about it.
There's research going mad on biodiversity and on so-called sustainable agriculture all around the world, but the work hardly ever makes a difference. It hardly ever generates what we call an outcome, so things go on as normal. We have to convince the landowners and the state that these things called ecosystem services or nature services do have high economic value, because they do, and therefore they're more likely to be adopted in what is currently unsustainable practices. I think actually the way of translating these 10,000 pieces of research into action is you've got to boil them down to a usable piece of information. And not only usable, but it mustn't interfere strongly with the practice of growing grapes or barley or whatever you like.
Ecosystem Services in New Zealand, a valuable 540-page overview of the state of ecosystem services in this country.